Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to another conversation with SafeSpace. I am Sharice, your host, and I have Danette and Britt, who are our guests for our conversations this evening. Please keep in mind that SafeSpace is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind and be receptive to different perspectives. Be okay with being uncomfortable with the conversations. So, today's conversation on Safe Space, we're going to dive into the struggles of teacher leadership and what exactly does that mean, teacher leadership and being a coach, and some techniques or strategies to help coaches to better understand how to go about collaborating with those teachers that are reluctant to receive help. Also, from the perspective of coaches, on what it is that we are actually in the classroom to do. So that being said, I'm going to allow Danette to introduce herself, and then Brett will introduce himself. I'm sorry, Britt.
Yeah, Britt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danette.
You're good.
Okay. My name is Danette Walford. I'm from Texas, Nacogdoches, Texas, and here in East Texas. And this is my 28th year to teach, and spent 13 years in the classroom, and received training from Nyhouse Education Center in Houston, Texas, and did the program there to become a certified academic language therapist, which I've been since 2006 or 7. I enjoy that role. Gives me lots of opportunity to work with teachers and, of course, my kiddos that I work with also.
Thank you. Britt?
All right. Hello, my name is Britt Bell. I am a English teacher here in Houston, Texas, by way of Longview, Texas, which is in East Texas. Here I've been, this will be year 17 of me teaching. I'm currently the department chair of the English department. I also serve as the advisor for student council. So I am in a couple of leadership positions at my school. I also have my master's in leadership.
Great. Thank you so much. So I want to start off by asking the difficult question of what exactly is the role of a lead teacher, or some buildings have them as a specialist, a lead teacher, or a coach. From your experience or from your perspective, what exactly do you consider a lead teacher or a lead coach?
Either one of us? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Danette.
We have team leads, lead teachers, and they try to rotate it, year to year, just so it's just not always on one person's shoulder to carry the team. But that person, is there to help and there are other teachers, just and support them, and take any information that they need to maybe back to the administration and things like that, and just always talk as a team and have a good collaborative team, and then just be able to take those things back to the administration as needed if there's problems or if they have ideas and things like that. But I kind of see them more as a guide, just and a I guess a voice for that team. That's my view on it.
Okay. A guide and a voice for the team. Okay, Britt?
At my school, every department has what's called department heads, which are basically just like lead teachers. Some schools have department chairs, lead teachers, and specialists. We have department chairs and curriculum specialists. But my understanding of a lead teacher is someone first, they come with the vision for the department. They're the ones who set, here's what we're about, here is what we need to accomplish, and here's where we need to go so that we are successful. So with my department, I always try to bring our vision. Our vision is reclaim, redefine, and rectify. We're the ones who are going to change the vision, change the direction, and change how we're going. The other thing is kind of piggybacks to what Danette talked about was when she said taking some ideas and information back to the admin, concerns, questions, things like that. That's part of our job as well. But the other main part of our job is also to be that teacher to go to when you need some advice, or you need you may have some questions about a lesson that you want to do. And us being the lead teachers, we need to have plenty of tools in the tool belt, so to speak, to loan to our other comrades to help them out if they need help with trying to get a certain lesson across. So.
Okay, very good. Oh, oh my gosh, it's just the night of Texas. One of your frat members, Yolanda, she knows you, Britt.
Oh, okay. Hey, Yolanda, how you doing? I see
Oh my
you.
God, I met Yolanda. We went to Teacher Air Camp together.
Okay, cool.
Ago. Oh my gosh, wow. I hope you will join in the conversation. So now that we have, I'm sorry, let me, forgive me.
No, you're good.
Oh, wait, that's the wrong link. I'm sharing the link with Yolanda. So if she decides to pop in. Okay, there we go. So I shared the link with her. Okay, now the question that I have, okay, how will you, as a team lead and a department chair, how do you consistently listen to individuals who are not very responsive to your coaching or to your vision that you have set for, your department?
So ask that one more time.
How do you go about having those difficult conversations with educators who basically they don't buy into your vision? They're not open to it. They're not receptive to what you're trying to see for the department as a whole, because you're in the English department.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's tricky. I guess the way I usually do it is you're dealing with adults, and I have to kind of think of it like that because sometimes that's part of being a leader. You have to click between being with dealing with adults and children. With adults, how I personally do it is that I let them go ahead and bump their heads a couple of times, especially when you have teachers who've done it for a while. And what I mean by a while, let's say maybe about 3 to 4 years, 5, I guess we can call it a while. I let them bump their heads. And what that means is that let's say if I go in and kind of talk with them, like you said, already discussed what the vision is. And let's say that we have a curriculum-based assessment or CBA or some type of high-stakes test. And let's say the scores don't come back the way they should look. And we start looking at the data and breaking it down. And, the way we do data is we put it all on the board and we put your name to it. And we just look at it and we say, hey, why did this, in our state, we call them TEKS. I don't know what you all call them Chicago, but the learning standards, whatever you all call it.
Oh, we
But
have the Common Core standards.
okay, yeah, same thing, yeah. So
Mhm.
we have the learning standards or what have you, and so we look at it and we just say, hey, why did Danette do better in 12.1 and you did not? Well, what were some things that we did? Well, I did it this way. Well, let's look at what Danette did and see if that's something you may want to try, or maybe you should go into Danette's room, let her model what she's doing, and then you try to emulate it as well. I think that's probably the easier way to have that conversation, because it's hard to just go to an adult and say, Danette, you're not cutting it, you're not doing it. You need to do it my way. I let them do it their way to start out. And then once we start looking at the data and breaking it down, then it comes to, okay, maybe we need to try it another person's way, or just give it a try and see if you see any difference. Or you even have to do it all the way through. Take what they're doing and put your own spin to it. So as long as you're covering that teak and you're getting it across and making headway, that's really all we care about.
Okay. So in your district, coaches are not used until the scores are dropped. So they're not in the building as an ongoing support for other teachers?
No, we're used. This is an ongoing thing. I don't wait until it hit the fan to kind of go in, to say anything. Usually, I walk around or I talk with my department one-on-one. We meet as a group where we have our personal learning communities or our POCs or our meetings or what have you. And then afterwards, I'll walk around and kind of see how's everybody doing. If we're teaching the same course or what have you, I'll ask and say, hey, how did this go with this? And, I'm always constantly doing conversations and feedback. So I don't particularly wait until it gets bad. If I see something and, I try to offer some help. But usually if it's a teacher who's just will not buy in and say, I'm going to do it my way and what have you, that's when I just kind of step back and I say, okay, I'll let them do what they do. And, if it hits the fan and we look at the data and it's not where it needs to be, then I'll say, hey, well, maybe we need to try it this way. Let's offer some suggestions and see how it works.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Britt. Danette, so with your experience, how do you get educators to buy in, to actually be receptive to the support that you can offer them and offer in their classroom?
I'm NIHouse trained, and I work for NIHouse in the summer a lot, helping facilitate the different trainings and things like that. So on my campus, we use those programs for pre-K, kinder, first and second grades. So I go in and support those teachers. I model a lot of lessons. I'm there kind of on call. I have my other duties also, but I'm pretty much on call there. I block out a section of time where I can go in and support those teachers. And I try to be very positive. I always try to, when I leave, just, make some very positive notes, just to leave on the table there. And, and sometimes if there's a little something that need to tweak or something, I might say, hey, I want to come in. Is it okay if I come in and show you how to do such and such? It might work better for you or something like that. So just maybe just offer that up to the teachers as well. I have a really good rapport with all of my teachers. They call me their work mom. So I have a really good rapport with all of them, and I feed them often. So that's a plus.
Yeah, food always helps.
Yeah, food always helps. Yeah, a little piece of chocolate on that note, that's always good. But I mean, there has been times when I've had to make repeated efforts, I guess, to go in and say, hey, I really like the way you did this, but when you did this, I really think, and did you use my suggestion? Or I say, well, I'm going to follow up with you and
Mhm.
see, kind of just
Mhm.
not an I got you, but to see if it's kind of spot check to see if
Mhm.
they're using your suggestion, and I'm always willing to model. I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
and I've been in classrooms um, watching a teacher, and they'll say, hey, I don't really feel comfortable. Can you come and teach it for me right there on the spot?
Mhm.
And I'm like, hey, yeah. And so I'll jump in and do. So you've got to have that type of relationship though
Mhm.
with,
Mhm.
so they don't ever feel like an I got you, but I want them to, I want them, I mean, I respect them and I want them to respect my
Mhm.
expertise, um, but I also want them to know that yes, I want to see this. I'm not just telling you this to hear myself talk. I really want to see
Yeah.
it implemented,
Mhm.
So
So,
it sounds,
yeah.
from listening to both of you share, it sounds like the underlying factor is relationships.
Mhm.
You have to build that relationship prior to, coming to the teacher with whatever requests that you may have. Now, how is it that you go about building that relationship, Britt? How do you build relationships in your department?
Um, I think with that, you building a relationship. The first thing you got to have is open communication.
Okay.
You have to have that communication between your department to say, hey, if XYZ is coming on, you're letting them know what's going on, which goes with being just absolutely transparent, and telling them what it is, what's going on, and um, not sugarcoating certain things. There are times you have to operate, especially in the leadership. You do have to operate with some discretion, but try to be as transparent with them as possible and let them know, hey, I'm not coming at you because I'm trying to run back and tell it. I'm trying to give you
Yeah.
something or give you a tool that will enhance not only you, but enhance your classroom and your learning environment.
Mhm.
The other thing is if being self-aware, being self-aware of not all of us are perfect. We don't all have super. We're not perfect in every way. We do have our deficiencies, and it helps if everybody kind of recognize parts that they are not as strong in. Like for me, I do not like doing graphic organizers, or I don't like creating them. I just don't. That's just not something I enjoy doing. But I had a coworker, she loved it. She could do it in all different ways, colors, shapes, forms. And anytime we did a lesson that had to do with creating a graphic organizer, I would gladly bow down and let her do it because I didn't stand it. The other thing is having the respect. We're adults, we're professionals. We have to respect one another and who we are. And we have to trust one another. We have to trust that if I know there's something I don't get or understand, I know that I can go to Danette and she's going to tell it like it is. Hurt my feelings or not, the betterment of us being the better teacher is what we're looking for. And lastly is inclusion, because we all want to feel like we are included in what we're doing. Like everybody has a part to feel, even though, quote unquote, we may be the experts. I don't ever want my department to feel like that I'm above them, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want them to feel like, oh, I don't have to do XYZ because I already know this, no. Because most of the times in our meeting, that we have with our specialists, I'm usually very quiet. I'm very just observing. If there's something that needs to be said, I'll say it. If not, I'm usually, very quiet about that. So, I want everybody to feel included, trust, respect, be self aware, and definitely you have to have that open communication.
Okay, very good. Danette, is there anything you would like to add to
Yeah,
that?
no, that's what he said. That's right. And he said something key also. Like when I do go in, I'm not there to run back and tattle. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm there to help
Mm-hmm.
fix a problem, and I'm not going to. Now, if it becomes a huge issue, and after repeated, it's not fixed, then I would have to go have a conversation, with administration. hey, I've done this, this, and this. Can you help me with this? Or can you, again, I'd go to like the instructional coach and say, hey, can you help with this? Are there any ideas that you might shed some light on this to help this person do this task better? But I think that's huge as far as, and also Britt said something about not, like, we're all on an even plane there. I mean, years, I finished 27 years. I still had to go through the Texas Reading Academy. I still had to spend that time and go through that, just like all the other teachers. And I do have a certification, after my name, and I have my master's, but you know what? I had to take it, and I took it right along with, some of my fellow colleagues, and we were just kind of all in it together. And, but I never felt like that, and I learned a lot from it. So I wasn't ever going, oh man, I know all that stuff. Because if I go to a workshop or go to something and I get one thing that I can bring back, I've learned something. And we're all lifelong learners from one another. And I do, even my younger, the newbies at teaching, sometimes they'll bring, like a new innovative way, or they're really good with documentation sheets, really cool little ways to document, and I'm old school, we still had the ditto, the purple ink, so, but, just all the technology that they can bring. And this past year, having to learn Seesaw and having to learn Google Meets, and talk about teaching old dog new tricks, but they were always very helpful with me, because I had some remote kids that stayed remote all year long due to COVID. So they were always helpful. But I learned from them just like they learned from me. So, and I think that's something too that helps as a coach.
And to kind of piggyback on what you said, Danette, when you talked about, we're not there to run back and tell it. I think also one of our jobs as leaders is to see it before the APs and everybody else get involved. And I try to be, try to get out in front of it, because I've had a few instances where teachers were doing something, and I knew, and I was like, oh man, it's kind of like chess. You see it 5 moves ahead of time, and I try to step in and try to guide them and whatever the case may be. And then sometimes, like, going back to the original question, sometimes you just have to let them bump their head. And then when they come and say, oh no, Danette, Principal Mean Mug came in my class and they didn't like this and this. And that's when Danette says, well, did you model this lesson and do X, Y, Z? Well, no, I didn't. I did the whatever. And then you just kind of give them that nod and that look like, well, you kind of needed to do it. That's why. And it kind of keeps you, I won't say out of trouble, but, I tell my department, I don't like principals in our classrooms. And I know they have to go in there, but I don't want them in there for the wrong reason. I want them to say, hey, I'm going to Bell's class because, man, I saw an awesome lesson and I want to go in there and check it out. Or I want to go to Danette's room because, man, she did X, Y, Z. I don't want them coming in and poking and looking and looking for something to call you out on. Like, I don't want that. So I like to be under the radar. We're doing our thing and we're moving forward. So we try to stay out in front of things like that.
Yes. Yolanda says, yes, relationship is the key to people being receptive to constructive criticism. Yes, that is very important, because as a coach, you're going into a teacher's space. And I definitely think there is some type of discretion that needs to be had, because essentially the teacher is vulnerable. You're coming in to, basically, it's not that you want to, like Danette said, you're guiding them. And you want to get in front of the issue. And sometimes teacher can get very defensive, to the point of, okay, I'm doing something wrong. You're in here to change everything that I've done. And so with that, we have to build that type of relationship, more of a bridge from this is what you're doing to this is something that you can do better. So we're not just coming in telling them everything they're doing wrong. We want to improve your practice.
Mm-hmm.
And building that relationship to basically empower them, to, okay, this is what you're doing, but I think we can do it better.
Mm-hmm.
How can we help you to help yourself? And also, what do you think you're doing? What do you think you can improve in? Because I think it is really essential to have educators to point out what they think they can do better. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think is not working in your classroom? Before we go in and tell them, this is what you're not doing. Allowing them the opportunity to identify some of their flaws. Well, not flaws, but, this is what I can improve in. How can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yolanda says feedback and reflection. Yes, that's definitely an important part. So as far as with the collaboration part, how does that work with you? Are teachers allowed to identify some of their own shortcomings, or how does that work in your department?
So we have, whenever we do our, when the admin come in to do our walkthroughs and what have you like that. So in ours, we have a place where you can reflect, and when you're typing in, when you're filling out the information for your evaluation, it has like, what are some goals that you would like to accomplish for the year? What are some things that you want to do? And then it also has on there, because I'm sure Danette is familiar with it as well. I believe it has something on there that says like, what are some areas of improvement or something like that. Danette, am I wording it right? I think it's something like that.
I think the domains, yeah, like some of the, like you pick some of those from the domains to set your goals and.
Right. Yeah. And so you have like some areas that you want to improve upon and what have you, or domains. So it gives you an opportunity to do a lot of self-reflection to see, where am I strong at, the areas I'm strong in, and what are some areas that I want to reflect at. And so at the end of the school year, once you sit down with your administrator, what have you, you go over it and you say, okay, did I meet my goals in XYZ? Let me reflect back on whatever it is I need to reflect on. Did I do well with this? And so forth. So that's kind of how we do it. The other thing that we do is, if we're teaching, like I teach English 1, and if someone else on my team teaches English 1, and we teach a lesson, we'll reflect from class period to class period. We'll step out in the hallway and be like, man, that lesson sucked. I didn't do well at all. Here's what, and I'll be like, okay, well, try XYZ this next 45 minutes and see if that worked. And so we're always constantly giving each other feedback, maybe even during the class period or the change in the class periods, or even at the end of the day. Sometimes we'll peek in, we'll ask, hey, well, how did that go? And we'll say, oh, this worked, but this didn't, but I'm gonna tweak this and I'm gonna do this. So, I think feedback and reflection is something that needs to be ongoing all day, every day. It just has to, because if not, then you're not sharpening your tool. You just kind of keep trying to cut something with a dull knife, so to speak.
Well, welcome, Yolanda. Go ahead and introduce
Yolanda.
to Danette.
Hi, I'm Yolanda Simon. I'm also in Texas, and I was really listening to what you were saying. I think that's the reflection part is the big part of what the assessment is now. I know years ago they didn't have that part of the assessment for us having to look back and see what did we do, what did we want to do in the future? Where are we now? So I think that is a large benefit to the assessments now for teachers, is that it makes you reflect. And also, Britt, I liked that you were talking about how you reflect even within a day. I do that often. The way I teach something probably early in the morning looks totally different, or may have some tweaks to it by the time I get to my last period. So I think when you have teachers who are willing to do that, you have some that aren't, but teachers who are willing to make those transitions as they go, it helps with the process as well, because they're not stagnant in one way of doing things. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I was like, hey, this is not working. Let me add a little this. Let me do that. This class, I'm gonna approach it a different way because these students are a little different. And I think that helps you in your growing process. And so the key to all of this is about growth. If you have a teacher that doesn't want to grow, then that causes a problem in the department. So that helps in the whole process. If everybody in the group wants to grow, okay, this is where I am today, but I don't want to stay there. I want to get better and tomorrow, even if it's a different lesson. Let me approach it differently. Maybe the kids didn't get it today. Let me figure out what I can do. And so all of the things that's in our toolbox is important for that whole process. And so that's why, I try to have, and I'm not over a team, but I'm kind of my own team because I don't have anyone else who teaches what I teach. So I have to do that constantly for myself. I teach earth and space science, I teach aquatic science, but nobody else teaches those at my school. So what I have found is that because of that, I don't have anybody to bounce things off of. So I had to find other ways. And that's how me and Sharice, we met at Air Camp. I find things that I do professionally during the summer to help me with that teaching process. Because I don't really have that, somebody to say, hey, let's do this differently. I've got to be always thinking differently, changing my thoughts. And so I do that by adding other things to my toolbox with that process.
Spot on.
Thank you. Danette, I'm going to pose this question. I'm going to start you off with this question. How is it that you can inspire educators to be vulnerable, to expose their shortcomings to you in order to get that feedback, or to help them support their shortcomings? Because in order for me to have autonomy over my practice, over my instruction, I need to identify what I'm not doing correct. I need to identify areas that I need to improve in, but I have to be vulnerable to be able to share with someone. So how is it that you are empowering the teachers? You have to empower them, of course, but how is it that they can feel vulnerable with you to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I'm not doing this right, Danette.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I have teachers that come, they're like, I think I'm doing it wrong. I don't. There's a part of my house that
You're breaking up on me, Danette.
Practice it over, but I go back and I tell my stories from when I first started teaching. I had terrible classroom math. I didn't know. I mean, it was awful. I mean, I will tell you now. I should have left that first year. But I learned from my teacher partners that were across the hallway and all those seasoned veteran teachers that were around me. And I don't mind sharing that with the teachers. Like, hey, look, I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be marked down at PDOS at the time. Marked down on that if you send kids to the office or whatever, or you have control of your classroom. I've been there, and I just want, and I've seen a lot, and I've I've practiced and a lot of things that maybe, I mean, just because we didn't have the science of teaching reading back in the, and so there may have been some things that, we did then that weren't best practices, but I admit it and I own them. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't do this, but I learned and I sought out mentors, I sought out my partners because I wanted to do better. But I tell them those stories and I'm like, I'm here for you because I know you want to be a good teacher and I want you to be a good teacher. I want you to feel that love, that sharing, because I mean, I'm not. We've all come from somewhere, a hierarchy, and we've either clawed our way up, or or it's been maybe you were just that person that has that niche, and that niche was smooth sailing for you. It wasn't for me. So I share that. I'm like, I'll tell you what. And there was a teacher this past year that I shared that story with because I saw her, I saw me in her, and I was like, oh, I can help her, hopefully, but I talked about something today. I said, these are just the things to make your life easier. And,
Thank you.
so you don't have to go through what I went through.
Well, it sounds like you're opening up too. You're allowing yourself to share your struggles as well. Okay. Britt, do you have any? Oh, yes. Britt, do you feel the same or do you go about it differently?
I go about it more or less the same way. Whenever I see a teacher struggling in an area, it's difficult because none of us, we all want to always have that, I got it under control type force field on all. And so it's difficult for us to let that down and say, hey, there's just some stuff I don't know and I don't get it. And, I try to, and I try to let them know, hey, we don't all have the answers. I don't have all of the answers, but I do have a couple of, tools in my toolbox that I can loan to you that can kind of make this teaching thing of what you're doing a little bit easier. Don't go about it. I always tell my kids, don't ice skate uphill. Don't do that. I mean, don't try to build a house and all you got is your bare hands. It doesn't work like that. You're making it hard on yourself. If you have people in your department who kind of knows or have the ideas to help you, lean on them and just say, hey, I don't get it. How can I make this work? And that's difficult. That's real difficult because, even now, I didn't have a lot of that in my department this past year. Not a lot who came in and said, hey, help me, and the thing is that if you're not learning, there's only so much raw teaching talent is going to get you because you need that extra somebody or something or some type of PD you went in to pull out of your toolbox to use to continue to build the kids. Because if not, what happens is you're going to plateau. And if you plateau, that means your scores are going to plateau. And if your scores plateau, it's like, well, what went wrong? What happened? And then you just start reflecting, but you're reflecting in a negative manner. Like, well, maybe I'm not the teacher I thought I was, or you're doubting your skills and things like that. And it spirals you all the way down. And that's not it. That's why you always have to continue to be a learner and listen and just get advice from people who've been there, done that, got the t-shirt and still working on another t-shirt. You just have to.
I'm definitely putting that in the chat. A learner and a listener. I like that.
Yeah. I like what you said about listening because sometimes if a teacher is struggling and you just listen, sometimes they can solve their own problems or they can if they talk through it, if they're just talking it out with you and you're just listening and, maybe they just need that sometimes.
Yeah, because a lot of times even, sometimes we just need to vent. And I get it. And sometimes I have my teachers, they'll come in, they'll vent, and I won't give them advice unless, they get to the end of their rant. And I'm like, so do you want advice or you just need to get it off your chest? And then we kind of go from there. Do you want me to tell you what to do, or you got it, you just needed to just let it out?
Another part of that is you stepping out to them. So many times, especially this year, everybody stayed in their own little area, and nobody reached out to other people. And one thing I think is important is actually getting out of your own comfort zone and going out and seeing other people. I found myself even crossing curriculum. Like I have across the hall from your English teachers. So as a science teacher, I started reaching out. There was a first-year English teacher across the hall from me. And I began to go over and talk to her, and she would ask me questions about, not just procedures, but like, how do I handle this? And she and I have grown to have a friendship through that. But it allows me, it opened up to where if she has a question, she could come ask me. And so oftentimes, sometimes you'll have somebody who's in leadership, they don't ever go out. They expect everybody to come to them. A lot of times when my department head comes to my room, I have 20 questions that I wouldn't have asked her if she hadn't come to my room. And so that is part of the leadership part as well, is being willing to step out and go check on the people who are under you. Let me go see how they're doing. Do you have a question? Do you need something? Is there anything? And then also being willing to step out of your own area. Like you have some knowledge in, like, for example, for me in science, but it may transcend or go across the curriculum so she and I, my English friend, we determined or fixed a lesson plan that used science and English. So, it allows you to do more cross curriculum when you kind of get out of your own box, get out of your own space. And so I've had that as well. And one of the other things that has helped me was I actually had one of my former students be a student teacher under me. And then I was able to work with her. So that gave me a whole different perspective, because she was able to tell me from her perspective as a student, and then now on the teacher side. And so I think that relationship changed the way I approach some things, because she could tell me, well, when you were doing this is what I thought as a student. And then I was like, oh, well, that wasn't really what I was going for. But, so it made me tweak some things, being able to see it from the other side of the student side.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. This has been a very interesting conversation. I have picked up so many caveats that I can definitely take with me. I put them in the chat. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Be proactive in your practice. If you feel that it's something that you need support in, it's okay to go to your coach, your specialist, or to your leadership and to let them know, hey, I'm not doing so well on this particular lesson. Can you support me? That's what leadership is there for. Okay. Coaching is a support, a form of guidance. Okay. Coaching is there building a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. And it's really important, like Britt said, be willing to listen and be willing to learn. That is so important. And if it's something we don't know, ask. Isn't that what we teach our students? If you don't know, what do we say? Just about, I know I have to say every day. If you don't know, don't just sit there. Don't just sit there not knowing.
There are no.
If you're doing a productive struggle, that's one thing. But you sitting there just, I don't know.
When I tell you our kids, and I always say, don't go and get on the struggle bus. What are you on the struggle bus for? You don't have to struggle. Ask. And the rule in my classroom is if you are actively engaged and you're doing what you're supposed to do, and you raise your hand and you're like, hey, Mr. Bell, I know you explained this 900 times, but can you explain it 901 time in a different way? I don't know any teacher on the planet who won't do it when they're not actively engaged, that we get annoyed by it. Don't get a ticket to the struggle bus and just sit there and you don't have to. You got to get out of your comfort zone, and you got to take the initiative to say, hey, I don't know. And again, sometimes for us teachers, it's hard for us to kind of take our own advice.
Mm-hmm. Jeanette?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't. Those, my students are dyslexic students, and I may have to explain something, something about language. It may take many repetitions before they get it. And when they're new with me, a lot of times they're real hesitant, and I'll see that glazed kind of look. But my older kids, I've taught them. I'm like, hey, if you're not getting something from me right now, I mean, if you don't understand this is. I mean, we're a small group, and you need to clarify. We need to make sure that you've got this, because I teach to mastery, so we can go on. But my older kids, I just always appreciate that. And they'll go, wait, I didn't get that. I don't understand. Why is this? And then they'll start questioning. Our English language is so hard to learn anyway. You learn a rule, and then it'll be a rule breaker. And anyway, so. And that I just love that when that light comes on and they're going, hey, wait a minute, we learned that pattern, but it made a different sound, or so I just love that they finally realize that, hey, I need to ask, and I try to relate to with in the classroom, like what you're doing with me in here, you still take it back and you apply it in your classroom, because it's all reading, so you go back and apply it. And I'm like, your teacher wants you to raise your hand. Your teacher wants you to ask questions. Your teacher wants you to, she wants to, they want to make sure you understand, So I always appreciate that small group time I have with my kiddos, because it's my time to really coach them through a lot of things that they can take back to their classroom, because they do have that disability, and I know it's a struggle for them. And I'm their biggest advocate. I'm just like, oh, those are my kids. But and making sure they get this is totally off the topic, but make sure they get their 504, and plans, and IEPs or whatever, that they have. And as soon as they're old enough to understand, I'm like, hey, when you took a test, did you do this, and this, or did you get all these accommodations? So I start talking to them about all of that, so they'll know they'll be their own advocate and be self-aware. So I know that was totally off that subject, but hey.
Yes, but it's very important. Yes, very important, because teachers need to be advocate for themselves. That's the important part of asking questions. If you don't know something, you have to advocate for yourself. Yolanda, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think that's a good place to be your own advocate. A lot of teachers, especially new teachers, they'll just dig a hole and they get stuck somewhere and they don't ever come out of that hole. And so learning how to say something when you know that you're drowning, so drown. And if nobody goes out there to get them, then they get lost in the process. And what we've had is a lot of first-year teachers that just quit. They just leave because they get so bogged down. And the kids don't, help, because they know their first year, and they get so caught up in a lot of things that they just say, I'm not coming back. Or even, 2 years later, I'm not coming back. And I think that's sad to lose someone that could possibly have something to offer that could be really good for the department, but that person just gets lost and nobody goes out to find them. And leaves them hanging. And so some of they're not taught to self-advocate. A lot of you do in the classroom, you're not taught that in class. So these teachers come out, just like in school, we teach them certain things, but some things they're not taught. And so they have to critically think. And so we have a lot of teachers that get lost in the shuffle and because they're not taught. Being in the classroom is different from being in college. You know, college is good and you got all this information, but now you got to try to apply it. And so when
the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, this is spot right here. So when we get new teachers, and we've had quite a few come through, if nobody goes and mentors them, nobody goes and says, "Hey, let me be there and let me help you, let me walk you through," they get lost. And I think that's where what we're getting to now. People are not staying in education for 20, 30 years anymore. They're getting in there, and part of the reason is because they don't know how to maneuver education. They're not
using the resources that are there for them.
They're not using the resources, or they don't know about them. Sometimes they don't know, and so they don't ask questions. So that's where the self-advocating comes into play. And also just the school systems making sure that everyone at the school knows where they can go. If you need help, my door is open. I'm here to help you. That's what I'm here for. And I think that's something that we need to push more in education, because we are losing a lot of our educators that just get lost. They get scared, they get tired, they get burnt out. How you get burnt out? You only taught 1 year. So but they just don't know where to go when they
so that's very, very important. And that's a great point to end on. Advocate for yourself. Also use the resources, use leadership, ask questions, allow yourself to be vulnerable. Okay, that is exactly what we need to do more. Ask questions and listen. Okay, and it's okay if you don't have, because as educators, we feel like we have to know everything, and it's okay if you don't know everything. First year or 30 years, you don't know everything. It's okay to collaborate, advocate, and collaborate. So this is the end of our conversation on SafeSpace. I want to thank all of my panelists. This has been a very interesting conversation, and our viewers will definitely take a lot of this information, take it back, whether they're the teacher or the role of leadership. So I would like for everyone to make sure you take a moment and shine your light in the dark. Have a good evening.